We're supposed to be at 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1. You want to pop the meal in or not and cook it? No? All right. All right. And Greg has requested a good time, and others that need to hear the sermon aren't going to be here. And I went, the wife and I went to Toledo this week. And the weather was not good, and the weather was really kind of wild getting home. We did get home, obviously okay. And our trip to Toledo will affect somebody here in this building right now. It will affect you in the very near future. But we went away, and when we went away, we went over the Huron River. We were on the turnpike. We went over the Huron River. We went over the Sandusky River. We went over the Black River. But it made me think about my dad. That my dad's friend, who worked for us for a while, they worked together in the 1920s for Continental Carbon. And at that time, my dad developed the Ever-Ready battery. So he did that. He told me that they still use the technology for making, I think it's Ever-Ready, for Continental Carbon, and they still use the technology for packaging that battery. Now, I can just go by what he said. Either that or he's lying. And so when you get your Ever-Ready battery, my father developed the technology to do that. Well, my father's friend's aunt had a cottage at the bay or in Huron, one of those places. They'd go up there to go fishing. And they would go various kinds of fishing. Well, they would go in the river to troll. I hate trolling. My dad was never really fond of it. They would troll, and it's not the trolling they do today for walleye. It's not that where they get the big boat and they have the outboards and the lines are out. They're in the boat and they got a 5-horsepower pump, and the line's just over the edge and they're trolling. And what are they trying to catch? Anybody know? It's extinct. And not the Loch Ness Monster. Blue pike. They want blue pike, they want walleye, but they're trolling for that. I don't know, I got thinking about all that, and I'm making collars right now, so I get thinking about things. And then how can we help you? And, and Corey's not here. She's with Baby Doll. Anyway, what's the first verse? Who shows up there? You want to make it fun.
1 Kings 5.
1 Kings 17, verse 1. Did I tell you that? Or no, I didn't. 1 Kings 17, verse 1. Who shows up there? This girl here, I don't know if you know her personally, but she's on Channel 8 all the time. And you were directly connected somehow when you worked at Burger King. And you told me that story. Now, how is that going to tie in with your life? I don't know. But I think it will. I don't think it's over.
I think I was saved from it because
You were saved from that. But you have an indirect, somehow, association there. I guess that's what the sermon's about, if it should call it a sermon. So who shows up at 1 Timothy, I'm sure, 1 Kings 17, without going to your Bible?
David.
No.
God.
Verse 1, no. 1 Kings 17, verse 1, we should know that.
The angel of the Lord.
He just shows up, Elisha. Not Elisha, Elijah, the Tishbite. Does it say the Tishbite?
Yeah.
He just shows up. And he says to the king, and who's the king? Is it Ahab? Ahab the Arab. He says it to Ahab. He says, well, I prayed it's not going to rain for 3 years. Now, could you do something like that? See, this girl says no. I'm to encourage you to say that you could do that. It's because he was a man of what? Nope.
Like passion?
Like passions. And so on. In other words, he was subject to the same temptations. I mean, he had to take the garbage out. He had to pay his taxes. He had the same headaches that everybody else does. Like passions, same temptations, same passions, meaning suffering, the same things that you and I suffer. Yet we think of Elijah as some great guy. And so how can God use that? Excuse me. Use him. How can God use you? Should I tell a story about bilingualness here? Being bilingual. How can God use that? Shall I tell a story about being bilingual? Me no comprehend. I can't do that. Can God use that? Can God use that for his glory? By the way, when Jesus told Peter to go fishing, and Peter did go fishing, and when Jesus intervened in that fishing, where did he throw the net?
On the other side of the boat.
One time on the other side of the boat. The other place he said, just cast your net out and you're going to catch fish. He didn't say throw it on the other side of the lake or go to some other lake. He said, well, the fish are right here. You don't have to go fishing there. He didn't say go fishing there. He said, go fishing here. You threw it on this side of the boat. We would run two lines. My dad and I would run two lines. One on this side of the boat, one you'd run in two lines. And you'd chug them that way. And we never used spreaders for a reason. We never did that. And
Why not?
because you're not going to catch fish. It's these guys that drive a pickup truck, run a boat, they wear sunglasses, and they think they're cool because they want to catch doubleheaders.
Perch?
Oh, yeah, perch. They want to catch doubleheaders, but if you're going out with inexperienced people, they're not going to catch that. You've got to be working that line. Well, we would work one line, and if you're just a kid, you just want to one line. So anyway, we went to a church. We got involved in a church, and early on, within just a few moments, I was invited to go to Quebec. I was never away from my wife. Never, ever. I was 35-ish. I wasn't 40 yet. No, wait a minute. Was I 40? I was? Wait a minute. I'm getting my story mixed up. Tammy straightened me out here. I was 40. I was already 40 years old. And we got involved in the church. We got invited to a picnic. And we went out there, probably Memorial Day or 4th of July. We got invited to the picnic. And the guy says to me, I know his voice. Hey, you want to go fishing with us? And he knew I liked to fish. And we just briefly talked. And he said, well, let's go fishing. We're going to go up to Quebec with him, his son, and with the student of the year. It was the student year from Hiles Anderson. Is it Hiles Anderson? Is that the student year? So of the big college, we're going with the student of the year, and this guy who went to church there during the week and on the weekends came home here. It was kind of wild. And so he said, let's go to Quebec. So I said, all right, I'll go. I was never away from my wife. And day one, man, I couldn't wait to get home. I wanted to get home. Give me that dog. I like these kind of dogs. What kind of dog is this? Where do you find them? What's the mascot of what? What profession?
Fireman.
Fireman. It's a fireman's dog. Remember that. You never knew that. Now you know this is a fireman's dog. That's the mascot. So anyway, they picked me up, and we got in the car, and I think we started out late at night. They picked me up like 5 in the afternoon. I mean, we drove almost to, like 500 miles from the Arctic Circle. We drove up north, and he's driving the car, and we were packed in this little bug of a car, and we're going to be gone for a whole week. And we went to Quebec, and we got to the town, and he said, man, he said, when I drove in here 20 years ago, the Indian children, they were all naked. They're all running around naked up here. If you're 1, 2, 3 years old, all those Indian children are running around the village naked. And so we get to the place that to get the boat. These guys lease out 1 million acres. They lease out 1 million acres, and they rent the cabins to people like us who want to go fishing. And so we get into the boat. We get all our gear into the boat that we're renting, and we're going to go drive to an island. And these lakes are not natural. All those lakes you see up in Canada, those aren't natural lakes. They are man-made lakes. Why are they man-made? Anybody know? It's for what industry? Logging, not for fishing. They dam it up, the river. They dam this river or creek up. They dam it up. It floods this entire area so they can cut timber. The timber goes in there, and they float the logs down to wherever the rail line is to get the logs out. It's all about what? It's all about the money. It's always about the money. So they're floating the logs down, and to get to where where we get our gear, we bring the food. Everything is packed. I mean, this boat is loaded. I think we went with 2 boats. 2 guys in one boat, 2 guys in another boat. It's a 2-hour ride. Now remember this, 2 hours to get to the island we're going to that's in the lake. There's 6 cabins on the island, 2 hours to get there. The whole way you must watch for granite rocks, because some of them come. You ever see a guy, he stands on water? Well, they're standing on water, they're standing on a granite boulder, which is because these lakes aren't real deep. It's not like 50 feet deep. It may be only 10 feet deep or 20 feet deep in places. Well, the rock will come up right up to the surface. They get out, they take a picture of it standing on the water. You can't see the rock. Well, you got to watch, because if you hit the rock, you're going to capsize and you may drown. The ice just gets off of there like 2 weeks before. The water is freezing cold. So we finally make it. We get to the island. It seemed like we got to the island around 9 o'clock in the morning. We unload the gear. We were the last cabin, so we get to the last cabin. We unpack our gear. And then he says, all right, we're going to rest for an hour. We rest for an hour. And man, as soon as that's over, all right, up, we're going fishing. We fished from then till dark, trolling. And I hate trolling. You got this lure going, you got your worm on it, you got your night crawler on it, you're trolling around. And we go from lake to lake, and we don't want to fish in the main lake where we're at. He says it's poison. And so we go to the next lake, and we went to some other lake, and we're trolling. And we're catching fish, but not a lot of fish. We're catching fish. And by the way, you can't bring fish out. I think you're only permitted a half a dozen fish. And you have to have a certain part of the fish, because you can't bring in a fish that is illegal to bring in, because they don't want it to migrate into Lake Erie. And so you can't bring it in this country. And you can only bring in so many. I think it's only a half dozen fish. And so we get there, and we're done fishing. We get back to the cabin, and man, we sack out, because we drove all night long, like 1,000 miles away to get to this place. Now we're sleeping. And we're out cold till, it could be 9 or 10 o'clock. Have you ever heard this story, young man? You've never heard it. See, these kids need to hear this story. So you say, well, how is this going to be used for a preaching in my life? So we wake up, and, it's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's 9 o'clock. I don't know what it is. There's a knock on the door of our cabin. Guy knocks on the door. He knocks on the door. I go to the cabin, to the door, and I open the door, and the guy says, come, we've got, I don't know how many men were in cabin 3. It could have been 8 guys. It could have been 10 guys. We had 4 in ours. And they're bunks. There's an upper bunk and a lower bunk. I had a lower bunk. The big guy, the highest guy, he had a lower bunk. And the other 2, father and son, had the upper bunk. Well, in that cabin, I think it could have been 8, 10 guys. The lower bunk, they were dead. We got dead men here. I think one was at least dead. The rest of them were unconscious. And they're trying to revive them and to keep them alive. Dick Tracy's not around with this. Who's the other guy with it in here? Maxwell. It's not Maxwell Smart. And there is no cell phone. That's not been invented yet. How long was it back to camp?
Too far.
2 hours. They had already left. 2 guys left in a boat to get help. They're 2 hours out to get help. There's at least 1 dead man. And this is day 1 of the trip.
Yes.
We're only going to be there for a week. Day 1 of the trip. There's already a dead man. And the guy that came was bandaged up and kind of all hobbling. I said, well, what happened to you? He was bear hunting. And he got his bear. Anybody know how? And he killed it. Anybody know how he got injured? Anybody know? He got what's called, in this case, if it's Ben that got injured, what's your friend's name that's out there with you? Not Abe. The other guy. Scott?
Scott.
He's up in what? They get deer fever. He got bear fever. He's in his stand. He's 15 feet up. He gets his bear, and he's all excited. He forgets
Where is that?
He forgets where he's at. It's called deer fever. In this case, it's bear fever. He steps out without knowing it. Falls down. The barrel goes in the ground. He falls on the butt of the gun. He breaks several ribs, and he knocks himself unconscious. That's how his hunting trip went the week before. But he was part of this group from. Oh, by the way, it was from Pittsburgh. So then they're going back to. 2 guys are going back to get help. We're waiting around. And, man, this is something. So we're getting up and I wonder what's going to happen. So. This airplane flies in. It's the owner who has the lease. The owner, he flies in this cute little Cub Cadet or Piper 3. I don't know what it is. Pontoons and all. It's the cutest little plane. He flies in and he's trying to make arrangements. And he said that they're bringing in a helicopter. Things are going on. We're getting ready to go fishing. And so I'm shaving. And I'm going to be nice and spiffy. I shave. Well, I say to the old guy, he's my age. He must be 50. This is the father. I say to him, maybe you know him. I think you know him. Mr. York. He's dead now. I say to him, can you shave my neck? We're so busy I can't even shave my neck. So because we're taking care of kids and trying to keep our taxes paid. Shave your neck. He was mad. You want your neck shaved? Well, I'm shaving. And I said, well, at least cut the hairs off. They're bothering me. You cut the hairs on the neck. He said, what? What do you expect in a date? You got a date with a girl? What's going on? So they start making girl jokes. We're up in the Yukon, and they're making girl jokes. What jokes? What are you going to a dance? And finally he said, all right, I'll shave it. So he shaves my neck. The big guy goes out on the dock. He's walking down the dock. He fell through.
Ouch.
Ouch. One leg up to the hip. We had to go out there and help him out. This is all going on when this happens. The helicopter comes in. It's a medical helicopter. And the guy is pulling the boats out that are docked, on their dock, pulling the boats out. The helicopter comes in. They are chopping off. I'm telling you, I thought it was going to crash. They're chopping the treetops off. And it's a little medical helicopter. Just going nuts. I just get the hairs on my neck cut. And they're still making girl jokes. You got a date going on here. Where's there going to be a woman here? Where's this girl coming from? It's like, it felt good, you know. In comes the helicopter, out comes the doctors, and they're helping them as best they can. They bring in a big plane, a four-proper pontoon plane. They bring this giant plane in, and that lands. They haul all these guys out. They're at least 4 to 6 men. One of them is at least dead. They never revived any of the others. I have no idea what happened. They're hauling them into the big prop plane, and finally the prop plane that takes off. So we're starting breakfast. We're going to have breakfast. We're getting ready to go fishing, and so breakfast is getting cooked, and all of a sudden another boat pulls up at cabin 3, and we're not too far apart, like 50 feet apart, 100 feet, maybe 200 feet apart on this island. Big boat comes up, and the guys get out here with chainsaws. And they come right next to our cabin, where the hen cabin. They start cutting these trees down. It's in the far north, so they must be beech trees, birch trees. They're like telephone poles. And these trees are coming down. And so we went over to the side window, and it's on a gate like that. You can open it like that. I opened the window up. It was better than Channel 8. I'm sitting there. I said, this is better than the news. There's no TV up here. I said, this is live action. Right next to our cabin. These trees are coming down, and they're crisscrossing them. They were making a landing pad. We didn't know that. Then off in the distance, you hear boom. You hear this it's a giant helicopter. It's like a military helicopter. It lands. Here's the Quebec police. It's Dateline. But it's not Dateline. It's the Quebec police. What are they looking for? They want to know how this guy died. And so everybody on the island is suspect that we came up there to murder him. So I'm under suspicion of murder. And they say, no one leaves. You're all here. And everybody left, got out of the helicopter, and the police are, whatever they call them, the Quebec police, they're interviewing people. They get to our cabin. Well, what was the joke? Well, who do you think popped out of that helicopter? What sex? It was the chick. It was the girl. So they go from cabin to cabin interviewing everybody. They got to our cabin, and they're assigning this detective, you interview him, this detective, you interview him, this detective, you interview him, this detective, you interview him. And guess who interviewed me? I had the date. And the guy, what do you got, a date? See, this is how God works. This is how God works. he's shaving my neck. What, do you got a date with a girl? You know, and he's just going on and on about it. And they're making all kinds of jokes. In less than an hour, the girl was there. And I had a date with her. And she's interviewing me. Where do you live? What's your occupation? How do you know these men? And she did the interrogation. I had the girl. And you can't make this up. You cannot make this up. So finally they're clearing us that you were not involved in this. The newspaper had the cabin exploding. It was bizarre what was in the newspaper, they told us. So anyway, we go fishing. By Wednesday, that was Monday. By Wednesday, there was nobody left on the island. We were the only one there. But here's what happened on Tuesday. They determined how the guy died is that he suffocated. He suffocated, or lack of oxygen. Don't ask me how you could suffocate in that cabin. The wind blew through there like anything. I mean, there was fresh air. It's like in our house, fresh air everywhere. There's so many holes in that cabin. The wind's just howling through there. They said it's because the refrigerators, there's no electricity out there. They are powered by propane or yes. And they said, well, it's because it was like a yellow flame. It meant that it's using the oxygen up. So if you're a bottom bunker, all the bottom bunks were either dead or unconscious. The only ones that lived and were not unconscious were the top bunkers. So it used it up from the floor up. Well, guess who were the two guys on the bottom bunk? Me and the big guy that fell through the... One night he's laying on there. They didn't move our fridge out yet. And he's joking about it. I said, boy, isn't that a beautiful yellow flame on that refrigerator? He's joking about that. We're next. Well, they came in. How would you like to be in the lawsuit on that? I mean, Misney wasn't born yet. I mean, just imagine Misney was involved in that. I'm sure they got sued from here to Timbuktu. So they bring in another little piper, and these guys get off of the plane, and their job was to move all the fridges out and rehook up the propane on the outside of the cabin so it's not killing you on the inside. But this cabin's been this way for 50 years. Now, why is it starting to kill people? Who knows? The piper flies in. This is where you come in. It says on the piper, Jesus was a bourgeois. That's what it says on the side of the piper. And I look at that, and I didn't know what it said. So what language was it in?
French.
We're in Quebec.
French.
It's in French. So I go back to the cabin, and I tell them, you know, this plane flew in, and they're supposed to move all the fridges out. And I said, it says on the side of that plane, it says, Jesus de bourgeois de vol. Does anybody know what that means? They were saying, we don't know what it means. Well, the kid that was flying the plane comes into the cabin. He said, well, we have to move the fridge out of here. And so we'll be doing that while we're out fishing. They're going to be in the cabin pulling that. I said to the kid, well, what does that mean? What does Jesus? What does that mean? He said, oh, that's my boss. He thinks this is exactly what he said. That's my boss. He thinks he's going to heaven. And I said, well, we're in the middle of nowhere. He said, and I said, well, what does it mean? And he said, Jesus is the only way to heaven. We're 800 miles from the Arctic Circle, and they're witnessing up there. Jesus is the only way to heaven. It's in French. Wherever you go, people are witnessing. And wherever you go, there's false doctrine. We picked up, on the way out, we picked up this French-Canadian Indian running trap lines. He's running trap lines. He needed a ride. He's swatting black flies. Oh, the black flies were horrible. We get them in the car, we're giving them a ride, and arguing started because they're trying to witness to him. And he said, well, isn't there this tongues and charismatic? False doctrine is everywhere, worldwide. I don't care where you go. You can go 1,000 miles north and it's there, and it's out in the wilderness. They're witnessing in the wilderness. There's false doctrine in the wilderness. There's haters of God in the wilderness. It is everywhere. Everywhere. Now, you think God can't intervene in your life. They said, what do you do? You got a date with a girl? In 1 hour, I had a date with a girl in the wilderness. Not by choice, it just happened. So don't think God can't intervene. You say, well, this just happened to me. I wonder what, and an hour later it happens. Don't think God can't intervene. And don't think that you can't witness if you speak Spanish, Puerto Rican, I don't care what you speak. That God can't use that because it was there in Quebec. Yeah, my boss thinks he's going to heaven. Well, that boss is going to go to heaven. And that kid better get on board before it's too late. And he had it printed right on that. It's the cutest little Cub Cadet or whatever. I don't know what that Piper was. It's the cutest little pontoon thing. And they're flying around. Anyway, we now fishing. There's the traditional way of fishing. We get in the fundamental independent Baptist church. This is the way you fish. This is how you fish, and you don't fish any other way. Well, we started our own church, and we did some of our own fishing. So we're fishing. We're trolling everywhere. Trolling. Finally, we find out from the owner, he said, well, after 20 years when this guy would be there, the first one that was poisonous, that drifted down to Lake 2 to Lake 3. Where we're fishing, it's either high alkaline or high acidic. It's either a base or, that's what the trees do to it. It's either a base or an acid. And the fish die out. So we started fishing in the lake, the first lake that he originally fished in. Trolling. I said to the guy that fell through the dock, I said, it was near the end of the trip, I said, why don't we just stop the boat and fish my way? Let's just fish my way. He said, okay. He was tired. He was working the motor. We threw the anchor over. It's only 10 or 15 feet deep. We threw the anchor over. You can better make sure the anchor's connected to the rope and connected to the boat. We threw it over. We threw it over, and I said, why don't we just take all these lures off, take your night crawler, put it on that, because walleye, that's what we're after, walleye. Put it on the hook and just throw it over the edge and let her sit there. It hits the bottom like perch.
Yeah.
And then you reel it up 3 or 4 reels so it comes up, so it's not down here on the bottom, it's just above the bottom. Yeah, and then he comes along here. Here's the worm. He goes. So we catch fish, bring up a walleye. And the guy we were with, he only knows how to troll. That's it. Trolling. He knows what he's doing. He trolled past our boat. He trolled past our boat 500 times. Back and forth.
Scared the fish.
No. I caught one. The other guy catches one. A minute goes by, catching another. We must have caught 50 fish. Every fish we caught, he got madder and madder and mad. He was fit to eat. What are you doing? How are you catching these fish? He was so mad. They kept trolling past our boat, trying to catch the fish that we're catching. Well, they're trolling up on the surface, dragging this thing through when they're on the bottom. And you didn't have to go over there, you didn't have to go over there, you didn't have to go halfway around the world. All you had to do is fish right here. There's plenty of fish right here. And we just kept pulling. He finally pulled that boat up to us. He stands up in the boat. I've had enough! That's how he talked. I'm out of here. I'm going home and I'm going to pack and we're going to get out of here because we're going to go home. I'm gone. And him and his son took off. We kept fishing. We fished for a while. We knew where we were. Then we went back and packed up. So a lot of times you don't have to throw your line over there. You don't have to fish over there. You just fish on, if you watch the TV, I don't know, do you like 3, 5, or 8? You just have to fish on Channel 8. You see? Just fish on Channel 8. Now, if we're fishing in Spanish, we'll fish in Southern California. Because that's where those fish are. Right? So anyway, yeah, I was investigated for murder. We had a good time. I take that back. I had a bad time. I couldn't wait to get home. By the first night of trolling that way, fishing that way, I was done. I couldn't wait to get home. We trolled all day, every day. It was awful. Last night I was there. I'm sleeping away. It's 11 o'clock at night. You hear this power boat going. And it's got to be an employee of the leaser. That's how you read about him in the paper. Kid dies in frozen lake because he hit a piece of granite in the pitch black, and his boat capsized, and he goes flying out, gets hypothermia, and he didn't wait till he was unconscious to get he did the and he died. And he was stupid. But you see, they get confident up there because that's their turf. That's their turf. They know what they're doing. But there comes a time they hit that granite boulder. Well, I thought the granite boulder was about 10 feet over that way. Wham, man. Yeah. Father, bless the food. And Father, bless the story that these young people never heard the story. That you use the story to know that God will work in their life when they think that whatever it is will never be used. Such as I took piano lessons at 19. 8 years later, God already knew that I was going to stop playing 5'2", eyes of blue. But oh, what could those 5 foot do? And I'd be playing in church. Shake hands before you eat.
So you would have been ready for your mugshot.
I was ready for my mugshot. Was that entertaining?